So, welcome to Ronin's Den. We haven't done one of these in a while. I'm Eric, and as always, I'm joined by Steve, and we got some TTRPG news that is rather fun to talk about and is stirring up a little bit of discourse. Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins retired from WotC, only to join Darrington Press and Critical Role.
Yeah, the other news is that the vice president of Dungeons and Dragons franchise resigned her position. That would be Jess Lanzillo and Todd Kenrick, the face of the digital video portion of Wizards of the Coast, the guy that did all the D&D Beyond videos. You know, the one where he's interviewing like Crawford and Perkins and be like, so tell me about such and such. That's Todd Kenrick, and he was let go.
It's not
some big news to talk about.
Yeah, not a good day to be at WotC. Personally, I see a lot of people online making their videos where they think this is the best thing ever for Critical Role. I'm thinking they're looking at this with rose-colored wishing lenses, personally. Perkins and Crawford have been, the creative director and the game director for 5th edition pretty much since 5e started. And we were reading before we started recording that Perkins has been with D&D, Wizards of the Coast, I should say, since 97. And Wizards of the Coast purchased the Dungeons and Dragons property from TSR in 1996, if I remember. So he's been with them in some capacity pretty much their entire run. And Crawford joined in 2007. So these aren't people that had minor roles at WotC or who were only there for like a minute. These were the creative director, the game director, the people in charge of driving the creative vision and the rule system.
Their official titles when they left WotC: Jeremy Crawford was the co-lead designer for 5e and the game director for 5e. Chris Perkins was the game architect and creative director. Those are not minor titles. Those are big, important positions in the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition creative team. So I want to preface it by saying, on the surface level, Chris and Jeremy are great designers.
Yeah.
5th edition is not a bad system. I don't think it's the greatest system like people make it out to be, but it's a good system, and they have built that. They were both involved with 4th edition, which I think is the best modern version of D&D. So they are quality people that know how to build a game. However, my reservations, I think is the same as yours, Eric, are that they are both there for a very extended period of time. Like we said, 1997 and 2007. We're pushing 20, 30 plus years for these two being in head positions at Wizards of the Coast. And during that time, there has been a lot of controversy that has come out negatively for that brand. And I know that a lot of people forget about it, but you think the OGL, maybe it came from Hasbro, but the people that are in charge of all that kind of stuff are WotC. Talking about the Hadozi being allowed to make it to publishing, which was solely on them. Like, they're the editors, the designers, they're the ones that put the books together. You can maybe get away with saying they weren't involved with all the other stuff that we're going to mention, but the Hadozi was solely on them. Either they saw it and approved it, or they didn't even look at it and approved it. There is a level of ineptness to that design, making it, and that descriptors and pictures, making it into a book. Somebody also brought up the fact, or I brought up the fact, that they're the lead designers. You're telling me that they don't have any involvement in the art team, the art direction? So when they hire a guy for Bigsby's Giant book that has all over his social media profiles that he uses AI art, they allowed him to be hired. They allowed that art to make it through the editing, through all the designing, into the book. You cannot tell me that they were not in some way, shape, or form responsible for that, which is why them going to Critical Role, I feel like brings a lot of baggage, which is where I am at with it. I think they're good designers. I think they're deep down, I think they're probably really good people. But at the same time, there have been a lot of controversies that they have been there for that have happened under their watch that give me a little bit of reservation and hesitation.
Yeah, and I feel largely the same way. My thing is, when it comes to Hidozi and to Big B's Glory of the Giants, they were either malicious, they just didn't care, and I don't believe that's the case. I don't see Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins as people who are maliciously trying to publish harmful material to hurt people. I do not see that at all. They were complicit, so they were told they had to publish it, otherwise they'd lose their job. That's something one of the people on TikTok commented back to me. They had no control over it. You know, it came from Hasbro. They had to publish the Hidozi. They had to accept the AI art. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody said, hey, Eric, you need to publish this horribly racist material in your rule book, complete with, you know, basically a copy-pasted racist caricature for the cover, for the art, for this player character species, I would quit. I wouldn't publish it. That's just me. So maybe they're just, like you said, inept. They didn't even bother to check to see what was going in the books. Because a 6th grader could have told you, don't print that. That's a bad idea. They were also working there and in key leadership positions when that whole Mike Merles situation was going on. Now, I don't know the hierarchy of employees. I don't know if they had the direct power to terminate him. But with their positions of power, I'm pretty sure they could have shuffled. They could have gotten him off the payroll rather than just shuffling him around to a different department so he's out of sight, out of mind, and people don't know he's there until he pops back up and goes, hey, by the way, I've been here this whole time and I'm leaving to go to Chaosium. Like, I'm pretty sure they could have done better than that.
I looked into the hierarchy. Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford were co-lead designers for 5th edition, meaning they were both basically at the top of the design team. During that process, it was brought to... So the whole situation that's alleged, of course, none of it was ever proven, but it's alleged, which to me is enough. A bunch of different women employed at Wizards of the Coast came to Mike Merles and said they were being sexually abused or sexually harassed by an individual, Zach S., at Wizards of the Coast. Mike Merles was alleged to have not done anything about it and then doxed those abuse victims to the person they accused of abusing them, which to me, I don't care what the situation is. At minimum, if I'm in charge, he's going on administrative leave until an investigation is done. At minimum. The fact that Jeremy Crawford and him are basically the top 2 guys, and you're telling me Jeremy Crawford had no say in it, no tie to it, when Jeremy Crawford is the one who announced that no, Mike Merles isn't gone from the company, he got moved to another division. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not. I can understand if Chris Perkins didn't have anything to do with that, because technically Merles and Crawford were higher than him. But at the same time, Crawford definitely had some power there to be like, no, we're going to do more than this. But he either chose not to or didn't want to. Some way, shape, or form, I believe he had the power. I could be wrong. But that's just my view of it, looking at the information that I've been presented with and that I've seen. And that's all I'm going to talk about Mike Merles. But yes, they were there and in high positions of power during that whole situation. Also, another situation that came up is that a bunch of creators of color, designers of color, came forth and said that they were horribly mistreated while working at Wizards of the Coast, while Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins were in very high positions. Once again, maybe they didn't know about it. Maybe it wasn't brought to their attention. Maybe these people of color didn't say anything until they left. I don't know the logistics. But the fact that they didn't do anything or didn't know anything seems very, very odd to me. And it's something that's a little bit of a red flag. Once again, I don't know, but that's the information that I've read and I've seen and I've heard.
And in my professional careers outside of tabletop games and this podcast, I've been in positions of leadership at my old jobs. And I'll tell you, it's very hard not to notice when something like that is going on. People talk. It goes around the water cooler. It makes its way around the office. There is no way that it wasn't, the rumors at least of those issues weren't unknown to them. Like, they had to have at least heard rumors. But that's just coming from working in offices for a long period of time and seeing how things like that have played out in the past when I've been around.
But ultimately what it boils down to is I don't really truly know how much they did or they didn't know. It's all speculation. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I believe they are good designers. I do not believe they're malicious. I believe both of them are great people. I have met people who have had nothing but wonderful things to say about Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, have known them for years, and that means a lot. But at the same time, I don't think it's a slam dunk right out the gate for Darrington Press as people are making it out to be. Could it be great? Absolutely it could be. They're great designers. But could there be some of these controversies down the line because of their either complacency or maybe they're just not, maybe ineptness? I don't know. And also, I don't know exactly what their positions in Critical Role or Darrington Press are. So maybe they're there just to be designers, not lead designers or in charge. I don't know what that is. But ultimately, I'm just saying, I think that there should have been some kind of reservation about it. And the community just does not seem to have that.
No, like I said, I think a lot of people are viewing this through rose-colored wishing lenses. And like you said, I don't think they did anything maliciously wrong. At the worst, I think it's just ineptitude. But them going to Darrington Press could be a good thing as well. They have experience with large-scale projects. Critical Role does not have anybody on staff, as far as I'm aware, that is experienced in running anything at the scale of Dungeons & Dragons. And with their system Daggerheart coming out, you know that they want that to be more than just a little thing that sits on a shelf somewhere. They want to make that something. That's why they made it. You don't make a whole new game system with all the fanfare that they had if you don't want it to go somewhere. And people like Crawford and Perkins could be the perfect people to help them make it to a large-scale production for that system.
And I agree with that. I believe there's potential for it to be great. But I think acknowledging some of these negatives is also smart.
Yeah, and talking about these negatives, I think this, and you and I were talking earlier, I think all of this loops back toward something that we have been talking about for months at this point. Our chain of predictions that have honestly been more accurate than I've wanted them to be, with one like fly in the soup, and that being Sigil. Yeah. And that's the push that Chris Cox wants for AI to take over D&D.
I agree, and I think the key to remember here is that Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford chose to step away from Wizards of the Coast. At minimum, I don't think they liked the direction that D&D was going. Chris Cox has said not only do they want to use AI, he boldly said, we are actively using AI now. They hired an AI art director. They continue to lay off key members of their team. They continue to lose high-ranking people like Jess Lanzillo, the vice president, stepped away. She stepped away. We don't know why. She has not come public with why she left. She thanked them for her time, but said she was looking forward to her next big thing. It leads me to believe if all these high-profile people are being let go and leaving, something bad is on the horizon. Wizards of the Coast has made it very clear they're moving towards AI. Chris Cox of Hasbro has said Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons will be AI. We are going to move forward with it. And people boldly yell at us when we say that no, it's not going to happen. Everything we've predicted, with the exception of Sigil failing, has happened.
Yeah. And I'm honestly a little bit surprised Sigil failed, but looking back, I'm not. D&D players are pretty stubborn about giving up things that they've gotten and have been using for a long period of time. So they have all that investment with Roll20, where they've repurchased books, or Foundry, or any of the other virtual tabletops. Migrating would have been a process, to say the least. But that's really the only fly in the ointment from our predictions. The mass layoffs they did of creative staff around Christmas, the half a dozen times they got caught using AI, swearing they weren't going to do it again, the person who uses generative AI bragging about it on their social media, sneaking their, I don't really want to call it work, but their images into Big B's. Wizards initially denying it, but then going, no, you caught us. But we swear we'll never do it again, only to get caught doing it again, but with magic cards. So, I mean, it's not D&D. And it's funny, the people who push back and they're like, oh, well, the AI future, that's Hasbro. That's not Wizards of the Coast. That's Chris Cox. He has no say over what's going to happen at, Hasbro. Or I'm sorry, at Wizards. But we see time and time again what he says is happening.
I think the people that say that, I don't even want to engage with them, because you have obviously never worked in a corporate industry. You've never worked for a corporation. If the head of the entire program, the head of Hasbro, tells this division, you're doing this, you're doing it. If they say, nah, we're not going to do it, you're going to be finding another job. And I think that's why so many people are leaving Wizards of the Coast right now. I feel like that's why so many names are leaving and so many names are being cut. You don't need 100 people to do a certain thing when AI can do it for free. Wizards of the Coast is cutting costs, they're cutting corners, and the AI future is coming. Mark our words, because everything we've predicted, with the exception of Sigil, has come true.
Yeah. D&D will be the first system with a fully AI dungeon master ready for you to pay money to basically get the do your own adventure through ChatGPT off of D&D Beyond. It's going to happen probably within the next 2 years, maybe sooner, maybe a little bit later, but that's what they're pushing for.
Mind you, we hope we're wrong.
Oh, I
but
really
we've
hope
yet
I'm
to
wrong.
be.
This is something I don't like being right about. And when we point out we've been right, people will go, "Oh, it's technology, it's stuff." But D&D and new books coming out, and it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the news that's going on in the Dungeons and Dragons Darrington Press world. This is just a little bit of our thoughts, honestly. If you agree with us, cool. If you don't, we understand, but these are some of our reservations. I'm Steve. That's Eric. This has been Ronin's Den. Breaking news. Have a great day.
Take care.